All right, I'm Brandon Janeka. I'm here with Clint, Ian, and Tori here in True Grind Systems in Central Texas. And today we're going to talk about something I am seeing a lot more of. Maybe I'm just a lot more aware of it. That's probably more than likely it. With just me diving into the whole belief pillar and understanding the sea of emotions inside athletes and how that affects performance. But perfectionism. We have a lot of athletes who are perfectionists, right? They come in, they want to do things exactly right. Sounds great. I used to think it was great, mainly because I was one myself. I wanted things to be perfect, and I sometimes wouldn't stop until it was, and then when I couldn't get it perfect, then it's a negative feeling inside, whatever level that is, but negative. So I've been diving into perfectionism a little bit and trying to understand where it comes from. And I found some super interesting things.
Please share.
Perfectionism is a fear-based response. It is rooted in fear or insecurity. It is essentially your brain trying to control you and your environment, because at some point in your life, you did something and you were embarrassed or humiliated, or something happened to where your brain said, we don't like that. I'm gonna take over. I'm gonna protect you. Okay, I'm gonna protect you by controlling your movement, right? And the real problem with that is you are always in your conscious brain, right? And that's not where we want to be in competition, because if you're in your conscious brain, you're not a reactive athlete. You're trying to calculate and guess essentially the next move, right? You're trying to sit there in the box, recognize a curveball, recognize a fastball, recognize the location, and then make a decision whether you want to swing or not, all at a blink of an eye, right? Instead of see ball, hit ball, instead of being reactive instead of being reactive to the pitch, to what you see, which is much better results. But in the weight room, we have it to where I see a lot of kind of paralysis by analysis, where the athletes will freeze up. They it's like we'll talk about a position they need to be in the middle of a drill, and then we say go, and they don't even know how to start the drill, when it's a step forward or something very, very basic, right? Because they're so in their brain that they lose their athleticism. They lose the ability to flow, the ability to be creative, right? And they lose their power, essentially. Right? They absolutely lose their power. It's really choppy, and then you have the negative self-talk after that, right?
One example I can think of recently is one of our athletes is sprinting, and you give him a cue, and we say, hey, let's do this, or stay through the ground a little longer when you finish these first two steps. You tell them that, let's say the times are a 1:8, for example. They do that cue. They run a 1:84, a 1:83. It's a worse time. And then as a coach, you kind of just move on to the next one. Okay, maybe I didn't click. Maybe I used wrong verbiage. Maybe X, Y, and Z. as a coach, you kind of move on to that next one, but they're still sitting there thinking about their 183 that they ran, their 184. And I can't tell you how many times we've had athletes come in and say, well, like they'll run that 185 and it's like, well, today's not my day. Or they'll say, why am I getting slower? What am I doing wrong? And it's just, like you said, constant paralysis. It's like, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? And the crazy part is once they start competing or once they start taking their goals to external, like for example, I would say best out of 7 series. You're running 7 sprints. You need to get 4 of them to be under this one time. And then that's their only goal. So now instead of competing with their own body, their own mind, their own expectations on themselves, now they can see the number on the lasers, whatever it says, and they know I'm competing. I won one. Next one was over. It's 1-1 in the series. How can I get to go to 2-1 in the series, or just win the series outright for like 4-7, or as simple as I think seeing other people also compete and try hard and maybe they embarrass themselves, like their teammates, because also like the same thing, like a perfectionist is myself as well, and in seeing someone do something really well kind of puts you in that mode of like, well, I'm not going to be as good. Why even try to do that? And when you see your buddy come into the gym with you and he runs a 182 and you run a 183, now there's a little bit of edge. Now I'm not even worried about being perfect. I just want to be a little bit better than my buddy. And they can start competing with themselves and competing with others rather than holding themselves to this perfect standard. And at the same time, kids these days are on social media. I'm on social media all the time. I mean, I see other strength coaches. I see other organizations. I see Division I facilities that have X, Y, and Z. And yes, I strive to have those things and have that ability to coach. But you can't get lost in trying to compare yourself to what's going on social media. And like both of y'all are parents. I can only imagine what that's going to look like. And the social media doesn't look like 5 years down the road. And comparing themselves to all the filters and all the expectations and all the, AI, whatever the case might be. And like, for example, there's a 16-year-old throwing 97 miles per hour right now. So how do you tell your son, it's like, that is a one-off, like, do not get caught up in trying to be as good as him, like, be yourself in a sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I've talked to my son about it, right? I mean, you have Instagram, you've got all these social media, YouTube platforms, all that stuff, and a lot of it, they don't realize it, but they are comparing themselves, right? They're looking at these other kids and looking at these other athletes, and even some that are completely out of their age range, right? And kind of that perfectionism, right? Where, when Brandon was talking earlier, I literally had a flashback of my son in here on the floor, and same thing, right? Like going through a drill, got a very, very minor cue. And then it's like he had 3 left feet, right? Just all of a sudden, in a blink of an eye, just couldn't figure it out, And it was to the point where literally Brandon had to reel it all back in and start from step 1 and was like, hey, you've done this for 3 years now. You know how to do it. Like, don't get confused by this one aspect of it, And my son does have that personality where, like, he does want to be really, really good at everything that he does, right? And he's his worst enemy in that sense of, that self, almost destruction. I don't want to call it necessarily or label it that entirely, but he does do that where he's like, well, he's doing that, right? And so one of the biggest things that's helped me as a parent is telling him and informing him, educating him in the sense of like, you're playing a very hard game, right? Baseball is a very, very difficult game. I was like, I hate to tell you, but when you go up to bat, right, Hall of Fame guys are, hitting 350, right? Like, you hit that for your career. So you're telling me you fail 7 out of 10 times and you're a Hall of Famer. That's how hard this game is, right? And so, and he'll even do it with some of his teammates where he's like, well, this kid throws, X, or he's fast here. And I said, okay, but also understand, like, I'm looking at it from an overall, right? Like, yeah, he might throw the hardest here, but like, what about these other realms, right? Like, as an overall, he's not as good as you think he is, right? And I can say that they're all 10. None of them are as good as they think they are, right? But it also goes back to, I start to use quantitative data for my son, right? Like, it's very hard for a parent to look at a skill-specific movement and go, well, we need to fix these 3 things, right? So I look at things that we can track. and I give him goals in that sense. Like, I don't like game changer batting averages, right? Like, that's one of the biggest things where these kids get so involved in stats. And I'm like, okay, so what? We're 2 tournaments in. He's probably hitting 300, 333, somewhere in that realm, right? But like, super small window. He's only had 12 at bats. But I'm like, okay, well, what I care about are what are your quality at bats, right? And like, without naming names, like our leadoff, he went 0 for 7 his last tournament and a half. He was 0 for 7, but he had 6 out of those 7 at bats. He saw more than 7 pitches. And I'm like, quality at bat, right? And then next thing you know, he comes in a elimination game and walks the game off, right? 0 for 7, like, what type of mindset did he have to have there, right? Where he didn't get down on himself in the sense of like, I'm not performing at the highest level, right? Like, he had to walk in there fresh slate with a confidence level up to here, knowing that like, I trust what I'm doing. Like, I need to get back into that mentality, right? The belief pillar of like, man, I've done this so many times. I know what this is, right? Like, and that's the thing that like Game Changer can't teach you, right? Like, sure, the kid went 0 for 2, but did it show that he had 2 screaming line drives, that the kid just luckily had a sandlot catch and didn't have to move, And so like, there's parts of that where, we get so wrapped up in comparing yourselves to your teammates and other kids. And, but like I tell Bubby all the time, I go, what you don't see, right? Instagram's a highlight reel, right? Like, it's always been said that way. And like, I love people that'll post, kids that do fail, and maybe put a clip of your bloopers together, right? I mean, like I said, in a previous podcast, like, I video my son when he does everything because 1, he's a visual learner, but 2, it also helps me as a parent, right? Like, I can help explain things by showing him video, by picking up on cues that Brandon or you have given him in a sense of like, hey, you remember when he said this? This is what that looks like, right? And so from the parent side, like, I love being able to do that, but trying to get them out of the expectation of perfection, right? They watch a World Baseball Classic and they're like, oh, well, that guy does this. I'm like, do you understand how many years of repetition and how much failure they had to go through to get here? And I hate to break it to you, they're still not perfect, right? Nobody out there is hitting 1,000.
What is there's a number for mastery of like, you have to do something for however many hours, however many times.
10,000 hours.
10,000 hours.
Yeah, and the problem, like y'all spoke a little bit about comparing the social media, and we understand that a 15-year-old throwing 90, like 15-year-old throwing 94 and above, 93 and above is like insane. How many of those guys are in the country right now? I don't know. Like,
more than there was 15 years ago.
More than there was 15 years ago, which is a whole nother podcast on are we outperforming our bodies? That is that's a whole nother topic I want to dive into. But we understand how many of those athletes there are out there, but their perspective is every other post is a kid with an insane slider, a two-seamer running
insane
15 inches or whatever, insane exit velo, and they're getting this they're getting this idea that they are so far behind that a panic will probably start to set in, and that's when that brain is going to start to take over and say, okay, we're going to be perfect because that's what we need to be, because we don't have that gift or whatever, so it just ruins, or it just inhibits the creativeness and the self-worth of taking their gifts. And like, oh, that, like, props, that guy is.
But what do we think the root of the perfection? Like, why are they striving to be perfect, right? Like, do we think it's tied to the fear of failure, the fear of embarrassment? Like,
no, I think it's tied to performance. I think it's what we call stat line identity. I think it's because they feel like their worth is in their performance.
But
is that
but
because
why is their worth there?
Well, that's where I'm getting at, right? Like, over the last probably 2-3 seasons, even just watching baseball games, right? Not even our kids playing, you know, like I love watching the game, right? But like I see more and more of the parental influence on performance-based outcomes, right? And with that being said, like that's the only, whether that's just lack of knowledge and what it takes to get to the next level, or if that's just the easiest statistical, you know, information that they have, but it's almost like, oh, my kid struggled, right? Like, and I didn't get to talk to the kid's dad that went 0 for 7, right? But like, I bet you if you were to ask that kid how his weekend went, he would probably forget he was 0 for 7 because he walked it off to end a game to advance us to the next, right? But I feel like we have, and again, I think it's an epidemic in youth sports right now, and probably even higher levels. And I know I talk a lot about youth because that's where I am most weekends, right? Like that's my world right now. But I think the epidemic in that is like we do have parents and coaches that are purely looking at outcome performance, right? Where did we end up, right? Whether it's win-loss category, whether it's batting averages, strikeout ratios, I don't know, right? I mean, I don't know what all these other coaches are, and like I pride myself with the coaches that I do have, you know, with that are coaching with me, and I'm not the head coach by any means, but like we're able to talk about these things in the sense of like we understand that they are 10, right? Like we are developing, and so like something we're taking an approach to right now on the coaching side, which I love as a parent, is sure, kid makes an error, right? Or you need to make a mechanical tweak or anything of that realm to try to help this kid be better. We want to give them 1 or 2 things that they're doing right before we even talk about the correction or something that was negative, right? Because I kind of dove into the mindset behind the kids, and I've been doing this recently, and me and Brandon have talked about it, trying to really dive into the youth minds and where their heads are at, and talking to them, it's like, you know, oh, Ian, you need to fix this, this, and this. Well, immediately they sink, right? It's like, oh, I'm not good enough because of, and I did it with one of our kids, right? Like he took a ball to the face not terribly long ago. And so, and he knows, right? Like he's struggling to get through the ball. And so like, we're having to spend a little bit more time there, right? And love the kid to death. He's got great attitude, like very, very coachable, right? But like, I also understand that that is difficult for him to overcome, right? And so, of course, during practice, it's a little bit more exposed, right? I mean, it's a team environment. We're rolling through, hitting grounders, and like, everybody knows this kid's struggling with it, right? But we all know why. And so it's just going to take him time. It's going to take him 10,000 hours, whatever that might be, right? And so I could tell he got frustrated. I was hitting fungo, hit him one. I said, hey, man, you got the next one, right? Hit him another one, and he booted like 3. Well, all of a sudden you can kind of hear some kids chirping. One of the coaches started to say something, and I just held my hand up like, hey, I got it. And I ran from home plate over to him, and I got down on a knee, and I go, hey, we've been fielding ground balls since we were 3. Right? Like, I know we're struggling right now, but I know you can do this. Do you know you can do this? Right? And like, we shut everything out. Next one, I was like, this next one's yours. Hit it to him, fielded it like it was, you know, he had done it 1,000,000 times. Right? But it was just this mindset of like, everybody knows that I'm struggling with this. So it brought on that pressure. And so that strive for perfection was magnified by, I mean, whatever percent you want to throw on that, right? And it's like, I understood, like, we were playing in a mental state of, if I fail, X, Y, Z will happen, right? And I hate to say it, but like, I'm seeing a lot of that from parents, which blows my mind, right? Like, just hearing things from the stands and other parent, I mean, it's bad. And it even goes into, you know, like, the parental influence on children right now is ridiculous, right? Like, I like to say, you always have little ears listening, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's times where me and my wife will be driving home from a tournament, and we're talking baseball, right? And like, I'm very good about not talking specifics if my son's in the car, but like, it really made me think, like, how many times has a parent bashed a coach, right? Or bashed a kid, or bashed something, and little ears are back there, and now all of a sudden that becomes second nature, right? That's what they start to believe, because your parent, right, which has been your influence pretty much your entire life, is the one that's giving this information. And so you start to believe that that's true, and so now it's like, well, man, if they're looking at him because he made an error, what are they going to think of me if I make an error? you know? And so like, I don't know how we change that culture around understanding like there are no perfect athletes. I don't care what level you're at. There's no perfect athletes, right? I mean, we just watched the, you know, the Olympics and the ice skating, and they're like, dude, that's one of the greatest things they've ever done. And it was like a 92. I'm like, you still weren't perfect, you know, but like the announcers were just over the moon about how that routine went. And so it's like understanding perfection is almost something that we're not going to get, right?
Well, I think that's the beauty of athletics. Like, I don't know about y'all, but I remember from a young age, like, I played volleyball. It was the only way to get a point is for somebody to fail. Like, that is the name of the game. In order to, whoever like fails less. Like in volleyball, if you kind of break it down and think about it, like I get a point when the other team hits out, hits into the net, makes an error, doesn't go for a ball, the ball lands on their side, right? So like everything is like out of your, you do the best, you control your side. Everything's really out of your control once it's on the other side of the net. And I think that conversation's like not really being had. And like what you kind of touched on a minute ago, where a really good batting average is 300. So 3 in 10 hits is like,
they're going to label you as one of the greatest.
you are phenomenal at what you do. You are really, really good at your job. And you know, I think baseball and softball is kind of similar. Like you wait for them to make errors, you capitalize on those errors. But that perspective, like, I think we don't really talk about it enough.
Well, and from a parent side, right, my question to y'all would be like, how do I teach a kid to accept failure, right? Make them understand like failure is part of the process.
I want you to
right?
fail.
Like, and that's the hard thing is like, I feel like so many parents are so high on the performance aspect that like failure is almost the worst thing you could possibly do, right? And like, I know in this realm, like we welcome failure here, but from the parent side, like how do you tell a kid, like, I know you're gonna fail, right? It's gonna happen, it's part of the process, it's part of learning.
What about that like self-accountability? Sorry, you keep going to.
No, yeah, we were touching on tons of good stuff. So failure, right? I think we need to define success, right? I think a redefinition of success at 10U is where you start. And that's where the failure comes into play, right? At 10U, success is not, 7 innings with 10 Ks. That should not be the definition of success.
But I would venture to say if we took a poll of 100 parents versus athletes on what success looks like on the baseball field or on the volleyball court, parent success would be far left and athlete success would be far right.
Left, where would the parents?
As far as like, I would think that most parents would probably be more on the statistical side of success.
So I think I would think both, because the parents. I think you're right.
I think there would be a heavy influence.
It influences their kids. So like you said, where does it come from? Well, I think right now it's a perfect storm. It's a perfect storm of the baseball and softball in the science and the technology, making this a data-driven sport. The money that's in it makes it data-driven, and it's all about where the professional teams are going. It is all about metrics, right? You talk about Moneyball, so that elevates these numbers. It skyrockets them, right? And on top of that, you have social media, like running rampant right now. And so you have the value of metrics, you have the comparison aspect, and then you have, our generation who didn't have any of that. And so you're kind of being introduced to this social media and metrics kind of vicariously through your son or your athlete, your daughter, your athlete, right? And so you're not even aware of how much value you're putting on these things. Like the first thing that when your athlete comes off the field, or maybe you didn't make the game, right? And the first thing you say is, "Hey, how'd you do?" Or like, "Hey, what'd you go for today?" Or, "Hey, how many innings did you go?" Like you say something that the answer is a metric, and that right there is putting in a stigma or a condition that metrics are value.
Yeah, but I think that we need to change the way that we talk and ask questions to the kids, right?
100%.
I don't ask my son, and again, we talk about baseball and performance and all of that, right? Like one, yes, I do think this is metric driven, right? Like I think everybody's moving to numbers, right? Now, do I think we're looking at the right numbers? No, not all the time, right? Again, your ERA might not be, directly correlated with how we threw. Right? Same with your batting average, right? Like, again, we go back to the quality at bats, right? But like, are you going to tell a kid he had a terrible day because he went 0 for 3, but he had,
3 barrels?
Yeah, 3 barrels and maybe a couple RBIs there, or whatever it might be, right? Like there's maybe you moved a runner over, right? Like that runner ends up coming to score, you win the game by 1 run, right? Like you still went down, like wasn't great, statistically. But for me, it's like, I like having things that are trackable, things that we can self-compete with, right? Like, I don't want my average to be what Tori's average is, right? Like, maybe we're 2 completely different hitters, right? Like, you still have to live within that identity that you have. And so for me, it's like, did you have a team at bat, right? Like, those are the questions that I ask my son. Like, how did you feel swinging today, right? Not, how did you do? Like, I know what you did. I was there, right?
Yep.
And even if I wasn't there, like, I probably followed it, right? Like, you're probably getting texts from another parent or your spouse, or even watching Game Changer or some form of video, right? And so I try to dig a little deeper, right? Like, hey, how did you feel on the mound today, right? How did you feel swinging, Was there something that you just weren't happy with today? Getting into more of the emotional side of it and really trying to dive into the feelings, right? Because again, if we just go based off stat line, like I don't think you get the whole picture.
No. I think, go ahead.
Coaching 12U, I think also like the influences you have around, because like you said, parents are going to be parents. They're going to kind of do what they do and talk about their kids' performance, however they're going to talk about it. And being a coach myself, or being a strength coach or athletic trainer and strength coach and team coach, everything under the sun, we have the what's the word I'm looking for? The option to kind of reframe things. So for example, like talking about like how you reframe success for a 12U or a 10U kid. For one of my kids, cuts and relays, terrible experience at the youth ages. It's everywhere. It's a madhouse. And our first 2 tournaments, we struggled a lot. People weren't in positions. People weren't doing anything that they're supposed to do. And then finally, my first baseman gets to where he wants to be. Throw was nowhere near him. That's besides the point.
But that was a win.
But yeah, it was a small win of him getting in position. Or, especially when these athletes get stressed or they get anxious, they resort back to their old habits. They go back to what they feel comfortable with. And I think that's also that perfectionism mindset. And they're not afraid to they're too afraid to fail and try new things that will lead them eventually to success. One athlete I have loves kind of throwing his front shoulder out, and been telling him, hey, keep this front shoulder in, trust me. Like as coaches, as strength coaches and sports coaches, team coaches, we're there to put people in positions to succeed. Whether it's uncomfortable for them, that's kind of part of it. But
I think it's a top-down approach too, where it's like, for me, I think you have to start at the parental side of it, right? Like the parents have to understand what you're trying to achieve as coaches, and, understanding that like, hey, we might take some of the
lumps, lumps and bruises in the way in there.
It's going to happen, right? Like there's no way we're going to be able to develop without taking a couple of these hard hitters, right? And it's just like, we might struggle here, we might struggle there, but like I love having conversations with parents and being like, look, I know he struggled, but we won these two things,
Yes.
right? Like these two things were good. So on the development side of things, like we're still trending where we need to be,
And then like also, it's not just position wise, like physically moving your body into positions of success. It's also mentally. One of my kids struggles kind of was a hothead at times, and he can get kind of too high and too low. And I had one parent come talk to me after a weekend. He said it's probably the best weekend he's had mentally. He was engaged the entire time, never got down on himself, never got too high, never got too low. It was was present the entire time and didn't let his emotions get the best of him. Even his teammates will come up to him and talk to him about like, hey, they joke around with him. It's like, you're gonna crash out. Like, you're gonna crash out at this game. It's like, I'm not gonna do it. I promise I won't do it. And this whole weekend, like, he made it a key point to himself to keep his emotions in check. And I tell him, I said, you're a great baseball player. The one thing that's gonna hold you back is you cannot, like, you let your emotions get the best of you. And I think it comes from trying to be perfect, trying to be who he sees on TV, trying to be who he sees on Instagram. And he sees them strike out 7 in 3 innings and give up 1 earned run. And he plays 12U baseball, the umpire doesn't call 2 strikes. He gets a walk when the ball kicks off of his teammate and he scores 2, and it's all earned on the game changer.
Yep.
And now he's beating himself up because he knows that's not what's going to get me to play high school varsity baseball. It's because I'm looking at my 12U game changer.
Well, and they start trying to play outside of their realm, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you get kids that, I had the conversation with, a couple of the kids the other day and kind of dove in, like I said, to the mental side of it and was like, how did we feel on the mound, right? Like, why do we feel pressure there? Why do we do that, And then one of the questions was, how do you feel when your teammate makes an error behind you, right? And
Good question.
over half of them had some sort of answer in the realm of like, well, I need to do more because now I can't trust that, right? And so, but also I realized very quickly just from how the game proceeded to go that like when everybody tried to play outside of their capacity and do too much, I mean, the wheels came off the bus in a hurry, right? And so it's like, hey, understand like there's certain aspects of the game that are going to happen, right? The best guys in baseball on the big league rosters make errors, right? But like, understand they still are able to wash that, right? And a follow-up question to that I had asked the kids, I said, okay, well, how long, and this is baseball related, but how long does it take you to get over making an error, right? Like, how long do you hold on to that? And the answers were wild. I mean, I had some kids that were like 5 to 10 seconds, and I'm like, all right, cool. That's like a deep breath. It's over, done with, I got it. Another one, 5 to 10 minutes. And then so then in my head as a coach, I go, wow, we're chasing perfection so much that you failed, made one error, and now you're 5 to 10 minutes of sulking in this, mindset of whatever's going through your head, right? And I'm like, okay, well, if you were the last guy, right, you were the third out at bat, but you're my pitcher, I've got 5 to 10 minutes of you on the mound still thinking about the strikeout, like, we're in trouble, right? And so it's like also understanding that, like, embracing the failure, right? And that's kind of going back to, the kids in the sense of like, hey, perfection, I get it. Like, y'all all want to chase that, but like, what does that really look like, right? Like, what I look like, or what I hope to see is like, sure, I would love for you to say, yeah, I'm chasing perfection, understanding that that's not really attainable, right? Like, when we break down baseball for, in specifics, it's like, it's a bunch of little bitty movements that have to be sequenced just perfectly, right? I mean, a throw, a pitching, hitting, running, all of that. And it's like, we can be off in a couple of those and still get the job done.
Yeah, it's too tall of a task for the conscious brain, right? It's such a complex movement. Sports is chaos, right? Baseball is chaos. You have no idea where the ball is going to be hit, what kind of hop it's going to take, the velocity that's going to come in at, the break. You don't have that stuff, right? That's not predetermined stuff to you. So it is extremely complex. And then the element of timing is in there, which makes it even harder, right? And the conscious brain just cannot handle that. It's just too slow of a processor, right? And so And it's not that I'm dogging the conscious brain, but you have to balance that. The athlete needs to learn when that's the driver, and when the brain needs to take a back seat and let the body take over, right? They get so in their heads, they don't even feel their body. Tori was talking about on a previous podcast, talking about an athlete had to ask if she left the ground, if she jumped. She is so in her head, she cannot even feel her body leave the ground and then land, right?
But then we expect perfection.
But then, well, they are, yeah. And,
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like as an athlete, like you have to ask your coach that I leave the ground.
Right.
And then fast forward 5 minutes and they're upset because they weren't perfect at something.
Right.
It's like there's a huge disconnect here.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, for sure. And so, like, the conscious brain, like, if we're doing kind of a one movement drill, yeah, let the conscious brain take over. Like, we're learning this position right here and holding it, right? Let the brain put you in that position, but then it's very important to feel that position, understand what this position feels like, feel the earth, where's the weight distributed on the feet, what muscles are activated, like that has to start the blend so the body can start to understand the assignment, for lack of a better way of saying it. Now, when it's competition time, when we're doing sprinting, when we're doing these highly complex movements, med ball throws and stuff like that, that's when the conscious brain needs to kind of take a back seat a little bit, let the body come into play and trust the body. You've already worked on your drills. You understand what thoracic rotation is and how to load and all this stuff. We've already dissected that and built that foundation. Now let's let the body work, right? Let's be creative. Let's look at this as an art form and not a science or a robot, right? This is art, right? How you throw a ball, like go watch Greg Maddux. It is like, watch any professional athlete. Watch anybody at the highest level of anything, and it's art. Like you watch bricklayers. Like, I remember we built a slam wall. This would have been like 2017. We built a slam wall in our previous location, and I was watching these guys build it and how they were working the trowel and just how the quick set was going on, and just they would lay the concrete blocks on there. I was like, yo, like that's impressive. That is cool. Like it was an art form to them.
But the difference is they're not thinking about it, right? Like, and part of the questionnaire that I had my kids on my team answer was, what are you thinking about when you step in the batter's box, right? And then a follow-up was, do you expect to get a hit, or are we hoping to get a hit?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what's the mentality there? And I told my son the other day, I said, man, this, like our team right now, and we're over 500, right? I mean, still it's very short, you know, but we have a team that shows up Saturday, can dominate, right? And then we show up Sunday, completely different team. And I had told my son, I said, man, this is not a skill thing for y'all. Y'all understand the game. You know how to play it. You know, from the TGS side, sure, I would love to have every kid in here and build that foundation because I see where that can go, right? But I'm like, I said, man, I would love to just have a game where we don't even coach. Just go out there and have fun. Like, get out of your heads, you know, because, like, I attribute a lot of my, you know, my success and my upbringing, and we played sandlot baseball. Mm-hmm. Man, there was unfortunately, there was a house that had burned down in the neighborhood, and they wiped it to the slab, and we had one empty lot in the neighborhood, and everybody met there. Every summer, every day of the summer, after school, and so, like, but I mean, that was backyard tennis baseball, right? And so there's no parent pressure. There's no, you know, it was just all of us feeding off of each other. And like, I mean, it was old school. It literally reminds me of the movie Sandlot. And like, I mean, we dominated, you know, and like that team dominated as a group, you know, in our early years. And of course, as we got older, everybody kind of went their ways. But like, I would love to get back to that kind of mindset on how we approach the performance, right? Like I told my kids, I was like, hey, when we go play this weekend, like that's not where we are going to get the work in, right? Like that's where you go pick up your medal. That's where you go pick up your ring, your championship. Like, we're just going to collect, right?
Competition day is supposed to be fun.
Yes.
But that's the thing is, I'm
Game
like,
day's
we
supposed to be
earn it during
fun.
the week. Like, y'all earn it on practice
Yeah.
days, right?
That's
We're
where-
just going to collect.
That's what
Yeah.
that's what the confidence should be rooted in, is your preparation. But I think perfectionism essentially loses it removes the athlete's ability to feel, right? They just lose their ability to feel. Their mind takes over. And so when you have a perfectionist, I think two things that you can do is make sure they're in an environment where it's okay to quote unquote fail.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't even like using that word, but everyone understands what it is. It's whatever, right? But make sure that they're in an environment where they're not being embarrassed, humiliated, belittled, looked down upon for failing, right? That their courage, effort, and presence is being being celebrated, and failing is not being humiliated. And then also start to speak to them more about how they feel, right? Like, when you're in the box, what do you feel, right? Where do you feel it? Do you feel heavy? Do you feel light? Do you feel nervous? Do you start sweating heavier? Do you feel something in your stomach? Do you feel it in your heart? What are you feeling, just to get them in their bodies more? And more times than not, when I start to dig a little, deeper into this kind of stuff with our athletes, it's they don't want to tell me, right? Because feelings are soft, right? They don't want to say they're a little nervous, right? And so it's very important that we don't demonize emotions. Like, being afraid I'm not going to demonize that. That doesn't make you lesser of an athlete or soft, right? But being able to recognize it, being able to step out, take a deep breath, and let it move through you, and understand, like, there is no reason to be afraid right now, and get back in the box and have fun. Doing those two things, I think, with athletes is a great start to get them out of this perfectionism mindset, because it's a tough road, man. I was a perfectionist without metrics, without social media. I don't even want to really think about what those two things would have done to my soul, to my confidence, to my insecurities and self-worth. Because, man, I mean, just like everybody, I struggle with all that stuff without it.
Do you feel better, and kind of pivoting off, like, the creating the environment, if someone around you is failing?
If they're better than me. Are you talking about, like, me looking back and when I was a kid?
Kind of both. I mean, I'm thinking about, like, and trying to create a space, an environment that it's like, it's okay to fail. So even me and the adult in the room, I'm going to fail, and I'm okay with that. And, like, I had a situation last night. We were working on some rotation work, and I realized I massively screwed something up. And we somehow got through a whole tournament and never got called on it. So I pulled the girls, and I was like, hey, go to this rotation. When we're here, we were doing this. I put you there. That's on me. I made a mistake. And someone catches on, we're going to get called for this. So this is how we're going to adjust. But, like, I wanted to make sure that, like, they knew I'm going to take accountability for that. Like, I made the mistake, and then, like, later, another thing, I was demoing a skill. Like, yes, I could do this back in the day, but, like, I haven't actually played in forever. So, like, yes, I can teach the concept. Can I actually do it? Not so hot anymore. I'm going to give you my best shot, but here's the concept. This is what it's kind of trying to look like. The girls had a couple chuckles. I'm like, yep, it's fine. It is what it is. Finally, after I don't know how many tries, I got the skill. All the girls like cheered it on, and I was like, okay, cool, thanks. Like,
I think the accountability side is a whole nother realm to the total athlete, right?
Yeah.
Like a complete athlete. I think the way that coaches, parents maybe handle and address failure and even peer to peer, athlete to athlete, right? Directly is a direct reflection of how some of these kids handle it, right? Like I've noticed with some of our kids, like doesn't matter what happens. It's always somebody else's fault, right? The dirt,
Sure.
the the this, the that, right? But like I also realize, on the backside of that, like when something is their fault, the parents are just, almost demoralizing, right? And it's like, well, no wonder he doesn't want to take the accountability, right? Like if it's his fault, he knows what is happening. He
Sure.
knows what's going to be said to him, right? And so like as a coach side of things, one of my favorite athletes to coach is the kid that's like, yep, that was on me, right? Like I know that was mine, right? I messed that up. This is how I'm going to take that approach, or whatever that might be, right? And like also very age specific too, right? Like we've got to look at different maturity levels. I expect a 12, a 13-year-old, right? Somebody that Ian's coaching to handle and respond to things a little bit different than I would a 7 or an 8-year-old, right?
Sure.
Like there comes a little bit of, maturity on, the game side of things too. But I don't think that our athletes understand the importance and the value of even what that looks like peer to peer, right? And prime example is one of our kids on our team, kind of got a little chirpy with some of the other kids after making a few errors. And so with that, right, like the kids started seeing that, right? Well, then if something would happen, it was this, that. And so like kids started picking up on this. And then all of a sudden the demeanor of the entire team started to go down, right? And we had to pull the kid aside going like, I don't know if you know this, but you're so highly regarded on this team that everything you do, you have to understand comes through a microphone.
Yeah.
Right. And so understand that just by you going, hey, my bad, right? That was mine. Like the kids look at that and feel comfortable in a sense of like, oh man, he said that was his bad. Like he never makes an error, right? He never strikes out, but he did, And so like, I think peer to peer is huge in that sense of like, man, Ian said he messed up. Like, okay, cool. I don't see him mess up that often, but look how he handled that, right? Like nobody yelled at him. Nobody did anything. It was just like, man, he took accountability and he rolled on, right? And again, this goes back to, I think diving into the feeling side of things and like, me as a parent and me as a coach, I would highly recommend anybody who has an athlete, right? Like ask them feeling questions, right? Like, and if you don't know what those are, like, I'll be glad to give you the same 10 that I gave, right? And like, I know it's tough to try to pull that out of your kids, but like, I also backed some of that up with give me a scale to 1 to 10, right? I would follow it up like with that. So, how do you handle errors, right? Like, oh, it takes me 5 to 10 minutes. Well, what is your ability to rebound from that, right? And I gave him specific scenarios, like, do you like big moments, right? Or do you get nervous in them? Why? And some of the kids love big moments, right? But then you ask them like, okay, bases loaded, 2 outs, bottom of the 9th, right? Like you're up to bat. What's your confidence level? A 2. And it's like,
You don't
okay,
like big
a 2
moments?
is not great with big moments, right? But like I would have never have known that.
Yeah.
And again, my son being stone cold, like he's hard to read sometimes. So like I had to start bringing this out of him because he doesn't get, super nitty gritty into his feelings. But like, also I tell him like me being able to understand your emotions helps me as a parent get you with the right coaches, get you to understand and be okay with certain failures and certain successes too, right? Like I don't like the big spikes of high lows, right? You get some kids that do something great and they ride this high, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, it's low, low, low. I'm like, man, I love the idea of like, I've been here before.
Yeah.
I've done it,
Yeah.
right? But again, that comes with that constant repetition of I've done this, I've been there, and I'm comfortable acknowledging when I mess up and when I don't. you know. But again, I think diving into the emotional and mental side of it with kids and letting them understand that like perfection's not always going to happen, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I think it starts with the adults in the room, right? So like
100%.
you talk about not taking accountability, lying, very negative things, but maintaining the compassion of like, hey, they're not taking ability because they're scared, right? There's a fear
Yep.
that blocked them from taking accountability. They had to make a decision on a split moment. Do I lie or do I tell the truth? And the reason they didn't go to the truth was a fear.
Yep.
Right. And so addressing that, yes, we don't want to lie, right? Yes, we do want to take accountability, but how you address that, not through anger, annoyance, frustration, but through compassion.
It has to be, right? And I keep going back to the parent because it's so important.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it is so important from the parent side of things to understand and be okay and honestly be compassionate in their successes and their failures.
Yes.
I mean, both sides of the spectrum, we have to be there and understand that, like, it is a tough game, right? I mean, there's so many of us that the games change. I would probably not be successful in this game today, right? Like, if I did what I did when I played, right? Like, it's tough, you know? But I couldn't imagine, and I see it sometimes where, like, parents are just constant, and I'm like, that kid's gonna burn out. He's gonna be done, right? Like, I can tell that kid is not enjoying this because we're searching for perfection as a parent in a 10-year-old.
Yeah, and that's kind of worst case scenario, man. Like that's heartbreaking. That's
Absolutely.
heartbreaking. You know, like for them to put in this work, to be amongst their friends, competing in this environment, and just miserable. You know, like that sucks. I mean, that's heartbreaking to me. So yeah, we're gonna continue diving into the belief pillar, perfectionism, all that stuff. We touched on it today, but we're gonna go ahead and wrap this one up. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe, like it, share it, and if you want more content about building better athletes, be sure to follow us.